Does this sound okay? All right.
We are going to start. You can hear our voice. So we are going to start. Vamos a empezar.
Welcome all of you to this wonderful course, 5 sessions on communication in the digital world, really making the world better and telling everyone around it about what it is that we're doing. It's really a challenge, this social communication, in our efforts to promote justice, peace, and care for the integrity of all of creation. So this is an opportunity for us to learn together, to share what we're hoping to do or what we are already doing, our own challenges, the questions that we want to raise, the problems that we want to have to address. So this is the first time that we've had such a meeting on social communication. We're very, very fortunate to have Patricia Morganti, who is the communications officer for the UISG, who has had a lot of experience exploring the needs of social communication, has put us on the front line of being able to send our message as religious women in an effort to try to make a difference in our world. So we're very fortunate to have her with us and to share her efforts to move forward with us with news that is authentic and can witness to the life of the world that we have and the world that we hope to create as religious. We're also very fortunate to have Bernadette Reese, who is with the Dicastery Communication. You may have heard her voice in many of the other news items, her voiceover, and she's been able to do a lot of research. Her perspective has been very helpful for us in being able to get a deeper understanding of what's happening in the world, particularly from the Vatican. So I would like to also extend this welcome to my partner, Pix Fardal, who is a Redemptorist priest, and he is with me in the office. And my name, I guess I should say, is Sister Sheila Kinsey. I'm a Franciscan, and I'm the Executive Co-Secretary of the Justice, Peace, Integrity of Creation Commission for both unions, Men and Women Religious, USG, UISG. So this is why we are embarking on this very, very important course. So Pix, could you please say a few words as well?
Hello, welcome. I am Amado Picardal, and they call me Pix. So I'm glad that we are here for this, at the beginning of this webinar. Next week I'll be on.
Yes, next week you will be hearing from him on the social media. So I think with this introduction and this energy moving forward for justice, peace, and care for the integrity of creation, Patricia Morganti, it's all yours. Thank you.
Yo voy a hablar español.
I'll be speaking Spanish. So we will try to respect both languages we're using in this course. So first of all, I would like to welcome you all. We're really happy and glad that this course was found interesting by so many people. This means that we need to have more skills and we need to devote more attention to the topic of communication, which I experience every day, and Bernadette will also help within this field, will help us within this field. I'll now explain you a bit how the schedule of the course will look like and what the objectives of the course are. So how did this course originate? How did it come to life? Well, it came out of statistic in my own country, Italy. So the percentage of Italian population in favor of immigration went from 49% to 40% in 1 year. And so I was wondering why. Why was that? And everything changed. So this change in narrative took place through Twitter, YouTube, and Instagram, and it took place and it was led by the Northern League party leader here in Italy. So I won't be talking about political aspects, but I want to analyze this phenomenon from the point of view of communication. So what happened? So within 1 year, the narration, the narrative, the storytelling about fear and exclusion was much more powerful and stronger, and was really able to affect what the Catholic Church wasn't able to do. And this really impacted me. It really affected me. So starting from that day, I said, I'm going to talk to Sheila, to Sister Sheila, because I want to do something for the promoters of peace and justice so that they can acquire skills within the field of communication in order to provide them with a more professional storytelling, able to achieve the objectives it needs to achieve. Not because we want to silence other voices, but because we want to sit around the same table with the same energy. That's the reason why we will hold these course. So it's actually more of a test, because it's the first one. Who are the participants, first of all? So from the digital world, we learned that we need numbers. 63% of them are promoters of the JPIC, so justice and peace and integrity. The rest of participants are other interested parties, stakeholders, missionaries, and people who are taking care of communication, even though this course is not oriented to them. 63% of them is English speaking, and the rest is Spanish speaking. I'm Italian, I'm sorry. So my Spanish and my English are not that good, but I hope that I'll be able to make myself understood. And 73% never took part in a communication course, but, which is very interesting, 74% includes digital and social communication within their mission. I don't know how I should interpret these figures, but I started wondering, and I thought of some things that I would like to share with you now. You can reflect upon these, and then later on you could tell me your own ideas. So I was thinking, we are living in a digital world because of our insight, because of our intuition. We're not prepared. We are in it, and we understand it's a priority, it's something we need, and it's something we need in order to promote the topic of justice and communication and peace. But we do it out of intuition, in a spontaneous way, which is worrying. Sometimes we learn through a book, or we learn through a course, or another option we can resort to is that we can attend a course, or we can have a lay person or a brother or a sister helping us in performing this task. I don't know, maybe you will have other options as well, and later on we could discuss the different options at our disposal. So what are the objectives of this course? First of all, we would like to perform an ethic reflection upon the challenges posed by the digital world. In fact, this word is questioning us. Just let's think about the topic of artificial intelligence, machines, computers, and the power they have. And like Catholics, Christians, and promoters, we needed to ask ourselves a question. So we needed to take into consideration the ethics. And we needed to start a global dialogue about the digital world. The second objective is we needed to know better the digital world for our mission to be more effective, and in order for it to better respond to the challenges posed by today's society. The third objective is the following. We need to learn to communicate in the digital world with more professionalism. So we do not have to become communication experts or journalists, but we do need to know this word, and we need to keep up to date to perform and undertake our mission, which needs to be our ultimate goal. And that's the fourth and last objective, to investigate how the information and communication technologies can help us and can strengthen sustainable development. Let's think of the agenda of the objectives of 2030. So these are the objectives of this course. This course was not conceived for promoters or for communicators, sorry. It was conceived for promoters. So it won't be very technical. So this course won't be technical. It will be basic. It's intended to promoters, and he wants to give you an overview about the digital world connected with the world of missionaries that we are experiencing. And we also have some inspiring documents. The first is the messages by the Pope for the 54th World Days on Social Communication, which is incredible. It's 54 messages by different popes. And then we have the social doctrine of the church. So that's another document we can use. And also the Laudato Si. The Laudato Si encyclical is really fascinating to me because we can apply the topic of the ecology to the digital world as well. And last but not least, because to me would be the first, it's the gospel. So it's style, it's parables, so what we now call storytelling. So this is a bit an overview of what we'll be talking about throughout the next 5 meetings. And let's see what we're going to do today. During this first meeting, it will be an introductory one. So we will pray, and which is something that will be connected with today's topic. And then I'll be talking about the digital world in general. I know you perfectly know what I'm about to say, but I would like it to be a common language which is understood by everybody. And then we will have our own personal time with some questions to respect our interpreters' human rights, whom we thank very much. And then we will have a huge opportunity to share with Sister Bernadette Reis, who's working for the Dicastery of Communication of the Vatican, who will help us to understand what kind of relation we need to start with the press. I just came from a conference press, so that was very interesting. And then we will have some personal reflection with questions, and after that, we'll have a series of tasks for the next meeting, because we would like you to carry on your work during the week, and then we will have the tips, the suggestions. So we'll see something very simple and concrete and practical about the communication within justice and peace. So this is an overview of what we'll be doing today. And let's start by the prayer.
Yo he seleccionado, yo no sé si usted...
I don't know if you had the chance to read Pope Francis' message about the day of 2020, and it's about narration and storytelling. I think that it's really a really spiritual message, very deep message. We do not need to be experts because, but it can be very inspiring because it can get us started within storytelling. So everybody can read it. On my PowerPoint presentation, I have the Spanish version, so I will be sending the English version through the chat so that you can have the English version of this message so we can read it each by ourselves, and then we will be sharing a series of questions to start our reflection.
no, no tejemos solo ropas.
We do not weave only stories. We're not just the human capacity to weave gives us not only the word textile, but also text.
Les invito ahora a reflexionar un poco con estas preguntas que les propongo, pero a lo mejor ustedes tienen otras.
I would like to invite you to reflect on the questions so you can see. And since there are many of us, we want to have the chance to listen to everybody. So what I would like to ask you to do is that I would like you to share through a small commentary through the chat, just because we will be having a look at the chat. So you can answer one or two questions or just tell us what this message aroused within ourselves, what kind of emotions we felt by reading it. Am I aware of being a living story that I tell in what I do, think, feel, and dream? Which kind of story I want to weave? How do I want to contribute to an inclusive, non-violent, and just narrative? We have a couple of minutes. I would like you to share through our chat your reflections, your thoughts. You can share them so that everybody can access them. You have two different chat rooms. You have the English speaking chat room and the Spanish speaking chat room. So please use your own to share your thoughts and reflections about these questions.
The questions are in both languages, so Cecile, you can read it there. Muchas gracias por...
Thank you very much for sharing.
Entonces, ahora vamos a
Now I would like, thank you also for your comments.
como todos somos una historia,
Since we are living a living story ourselves, let's see what's happening throughout the world. And I would like to start by showing you a video, a very funny video. I don't know if you know TikTok. TikTok is one of the latest social media coming from China. It was born 2 years ago, and it's for teenagers or very young kids. It's a very simple social media only for smartphones, and you can use it to record videos, very short videos, just short films with music. And the person feels as if they were the main actor or a star of the social media. So I will show you now a star of a series of videos made by an influencer here in Italy, Marta Losito. She's 13, 14 years old, if I'm not wrong, and she's an influencer of TikTok, this kind of social media. So please, let's all have a look, and let's look to it from a critical point of view. What can we learn from this video? So let's watch it.
Che ci sentiamo poco, siamo complici sto gioco, senza richiamarci il giorno dopo. Non puoi capire che effetto fai quando mi connetto e sei online. Mandami una foto e poi se vuoi ci mettiamo a letto, ma
Cosa che ho imparato è che chi ama non si arrende mai. Facciamo un viaggio, che ne dici? Immagina le cicatrici, strade di Parigi, le lacrime e il tamici. Sarò a fianco a te e credimi che passerà.
Every time you walk into the room, got me feeling crazy. Shot my heart, boom, boom. Any other boy would share, but me, I look away, cause you're making me scared. Trying not to breathe, 1, 2, 3. Trying not to breathe.
quello che ha baciato il fondo dopo l'ha tradito. Baby, I'm perfect for you.
She said she too young, don't want no man, so she gon' call her friends, now that's a plan. I just ordered sushi from Japan. Now yo bitch wanna kick it, Jackie Chan. In alto ma con lei qua a fianco, ma io penso ad altro e fumo un altro grammo. Guardami negli occhi che non scherzo affatto, non lascio la flotta anche se sta affondando. Volo alto, sto su un'astronave, sono fatto marcio, ho messo male, ma credimi per te.
I was looking at Sheila's face, and then please do not leave me alone. Just join me here next to me. I'm sorry that we cannot share about this because I'm sure you left plenty of comments. But let's try and see what can we learn from this video. Well, my niece, she's all the time on TikTok. So we're not talking about the future. We're talking about a very hot topic. I think that most of us probably are more, let's say, mature. So we're not that young. So please do write your comments on the chat so that we can share them. So, but let's have a look. Let's consider this video from a communication point of view, not from a technical point of view. So let's see it from the point of view of communication. So I was really impressed by branding. So we're talking about a YouTube video, but she had, well, the TikTok logo type and her own name. They were clearly apparent. We could see them. So she had her own brand. You know, it's as if she had her own logo type, as if we were talking about Nike or other brands. Language wasn't important because sometimes she was singing in a language or another, or she wasn't singing at all. Movements were interesting because she was dancing all the time. and the context and the framework. The context was changing, the setting was changing. She could be at home, she could be outside. So this tells us that we can communicate and tell stories from anywhere. Young people, the youth, really challenge us using a kind of communication we're not used to. We cannot understand it. And even though adults are not on TikTok, digital culture is having an impact, is influencing us and is changing us. So I see it also within the UISG, so that we have so when we were having lunch, everybody's got their own mobile phone. So, for example, I take my own motorbike to reach this office, and I can see that all cars stuck in the traffic jams are chatting and using their mobile phones, their smartphones. So I think that communication is a really important topic. And if we do not understand this, then it will be very difficult to learn. So I don't know if Bernadette would like to add something.
Observations of Patrizia, and I think this is a very, very good way of, number one, for us adults to enter into the world of young people. It's extremely accessible to us, and this also has an impact, and we'll get to it later. I'll be making some adaptations regarding how we interact with the press, because as we know, the press is generally interested in public events. So the question then is, how do we organize events so that there is something that appeals to every generation? And how will we know what will appeal to every generation unless we know them?
Thank you, Bernadette. I move.
Thank you, Bernadette. Go back to Spanish. I was having a look at the comment. Yeah, we're talking about a superficial kind of communication, but we are living right now in this kind of society. And if we start being biased adults, then we will not be close to them. We need to start a dialogue also with people who are on TikTok, because these teenagers, they come to our schools, to our parishes, to our parish churches, and these are the people with whom we need to start a dialogue if we want to build a different world. Because, well, in a while, I won't be here any longer, and teenagers, and this teenager, she will be here, she will continue living here. So let's move forward. Of course, you can keep on commenting using the chat rooms. So let's use also these means of communication in order not to get bored. So one of the most important aspects of digital culture is that it needs two elements. It needs our time and our attention, and it calls for a total attention, full attention. That's why it's been conceived in order to consume up all of our time. And this doesn't concern only young people. I would like to ask you, how often do you grab your smartphone during the day? According to some statistics, they say 200, 250 times a day. I think that's even more. So sometimes we touch or we grab our headphones even if we don't need it. Because I have no notifications, because I don't like notifications, so I needed to open my smartphone. So we need to have maturity and wisdom, and we needed to educate this wisdom and this maturity, also through this course, for example. And the power of digital world is huge, is hidden, and it's really penetrating. So I was making reference to time and attention. So going back to storytelling, I think that it's quite interesting to see how advertisement of cookies, for example, or airlines can turn into stories. It's not something just, to sell any product. It's to sell a given narrative. Once in Italy, Vodafone, a mobile company, created 3 different commercials which were anyway connected one with the other. So you really felt like going forward to see the next episode because they were all connected. So you were really looking forward to seeing how it would end, how the story would end. So in order to attract people's attention, we need to use storytelling. We need to learn this technique, storytelling. So narrative has been left to companies. And we have the gospel, which is an incredible narrative of symbols, of images, of words. So what do we mean by analog and digital world? Because we're talking about a really incredible change. So the analog world and the digital world, 2 different forms to represent the word. The analog world is a word where a phenomenon and the way we represent it match. For example, what time is it? It's 2 o'clock. And the information matches it. Whereas in the digital world, this doesn't occur because the way we represent the world is a numeric, is a digital world. So everything turns into 0, 1, 0, 1. So a binary code. I don't know if I'm maybe running too fast, but we need to understand how big this change was, because we're talking about a radical kind of change. Everything is turning into numbers, into digits. The world is getting more and more little because I can record thousands of phenomena within a pen drive. So reality is turning into a digital and a numeric one. So we are representing our interactions through a series of points and lines, dots and lines. So everything is turning into numbers in a functionalist dynamism. So engineers, they are not interested in the quality of interactions because everything is working. I think that, well, to us, it's a very different thing. At least that's what I think. I don't know if you agree with me. If it's, well, we should always consider if it's affecting people. So we're living in a less and less physical world, which doesn't mean that it's not a real world. It's world, but it's less and less physical. It's a real world, but less physical. So we're getting used to virtual representations of reality. So we are losing a bit its material dimension. And I know you know everything, but for example, Amazon. Amazon is the largest store of the world, but they do not own one single product. They do not own anything. Airbnb, for example, is the largest hotel of the world, or hotel website of the world, and they do not own even a bed, nothing. So they're real, but they're virtual at the same time. They're really real, but they're virtual. So now we're moving from objects and things to services. Why is Amazon important? Because it's performing a service in my place. I'm at home, I buy through my own application, and in 2 minutes, and tomorrow I'll get it delivered at my office. So what we lack in the digital world is our 5 senses, because we will use only some of them, and empathy is lacking, is missing. Empathy starts, and it starts through non-verbal communication. That's why in the digital world we have a more violent communication, because we do not have a body in front of us, which is what initiates empathy. And sometimes we try to overcome this problem by using emoticons and smileys. So also on WhatsApp, you do not have only just plain word text because men and women, we need to express our emotions. And that's why we're using these smileys and emoticons. So we are experiencing a big contradiction. So we are being told that there is no mediation. So they say there is no mediation. We're all producers and consumers of communication. The problem is that this is not real because everything is mediated through the digital world. So most important currency we're using today is data and attention. More time we spend on the internet, more data companies have and more data they can use to create a digital profile of our dreams or our wishes or what we are looking for. And what does it mean? It means that if I'm on Facebook talking to my niece, for example, then I'll have some ads which are connected with my own choices on that I performed on the internet. I don't know if it's good or bad, but that's the reality, and we needed to realize that that's how it is. Then we produce plenty of data, really an impressive amount of data, but we cannot process it like human beings. So we completely delegated this process to machines. So that's the reason why we're talking about learning machines. That is to say, it's machines and computers that are actually learning and changing the way they act based on the data they receive. Of course, there are always algorithms at play, and there's a person that thought of this algorithm and created it. As I said, I really like the Laudato Si encyclical. So we could be talking about digital pollution. So when, for example, I see that we share something and we don't even know if it's a fake news or if it's real, then what we do is we create digital pollution. And as promoters of justice and peace, we need to be more careful. We cannot overwhelm the network. There are already plenty of data. We need to share necessary data and do it in the correct way. So it's better to have one good video rather than 10 meaningless videos, which will just overwhelm the network and they will overload it. I don't want to offend anybody. This is my daily experience in the union. The International Union of Superior Generals, but you probably have a different idea, so I don't want to offend anybody. And the speed of these data won't allow us to reflect and process them very well. So even though we do not want it, we are part of this superficial behavior. We can also provide a contribution to narrative. We can provide a contribution to an incorrect, superficial storytelling. If I'm sharing something I don't know anything about, if I didn't inform myself, I didn't read about this topic. And these technologies will present us with a more richer face of the world, because sometimes we didn't choose for some technologies and we opted for others. And I know that this in some countries creates a gap, a fracture. And also from a cultural point of view, we need to have our own style. But at the same time, the digital world is an area providing us with plenty of opportunities and chances. This very course is an example of it. We have Sister Florence, who's sitting behind 5 computers to stream this course online and to make also translation possible. And it's also a generosity space. Just think of Wikipedia. Just think of the work that has been performed to provide us with the contents of Wikipedia. So this sharing of common goods is based on the gospel as well. So how can we, as promoters of justice and peace, be part of this digital world adopting an evangelical style? And the digital network is made up of relations and edges and nodes, and also based on cosmology and quantitative physics. The most important part is not the dots, but the relations existing and connecting these dots. And as religious men and women, we are experts of relations. This is communication. Communication is not only opening or creating a Facebook page. No, what's the contribution of religious life? Well, it's a contribution that it can really lead and guide collaboration, communication, and relations. So I don't know if you listen this word, infosphere. We have a digital philosopher here in Italy who left our country, who is now currently living and working from London, Florida. That's his name, and he's an expert as a digital philosopher of infosphere. Infosphere is a set of all the media, of all communication media, either digital or analog. So it's the whole set of everything that is creating communication between human beings and objects. It's as if we were talking about a neural brain surrounding us. Yesterday, I listened to an interview. A philosopher said Copernicus removed the man from the center of the universe. Darwin took the man away from the biologic sacrality with evolution. Freud removed the man from the control of the mind, and the digital world is removing us from the center because in the digital worlds, objects and other things are disappearing in a way. So I think this is very interesting. And he also said that, of course, everybody can play as if chess. We can play chess. And if we play chess against the computer, then the computer will win. But what does a human being have which a computer has not? It's passion and a deep desire, a profound desire. This is what makes us different from machines, but we need to be part of this trend and framework together with machines. And this is the challenge we need to face. I have two questions for you, Flo. Could you please help me, Florence? Could you please remove my image? Thank you. So I have two questions for you. I don't know if they will be able to start some reflection, if there will be food for thought. I'll leave you a couple of minutes so that you can share these two questions. So how does everything I've just listened to is affecting my mission in the framework of justice and peace? How does everything affect my mission within the framework of justice and peace? That's the first question. Second question, what do I need to change about my attitude for the mission to respond to the challenges of the digital world? So what do I need to change in my behavior for the mission to better respond to the challenges of the digital world? Questions have already been translated into English. Unfortunately, we only see them here on screen in Spanish, but you have a couple of minutes to reflect upon it. And if you have questions or comments, please share them through the chat room, and then we'll have a couple of minutes so we can discuss it with Bernadette before we move to the next topic. I'll be repeating the questions once again. How is everything affecting my mission in the framework of justice and peace? And what do I need to change about my behavior or attitude for the mission to better respond to the world, to the challenges of the digital world?
Bueno, muchas gracias porque han llegado.
Thank you very much, because we received plenty of comments and everybody can read them, so we can learn from each other.
No tenemos muchas respuestas.
We don't have many answers. We have plenty of challenges. And I feel it's really impressive, the kind of attitude and behavior we have as adults. We always think that we need to convince somebody else. Youth don't do that. Young people do not do that because, well, for example, my niece, she prefers talking to her friend rather than talking to her aunt. And I think that's normal, because probably I'm boring to her. So how can we change our attitude by, well, being aware of that we are educators, we are adults, but how can we have a more peer-to-peer approach? Because the network is an horizontal one. So people who are born in the digital world, they do not accept authority as like we are used to it in religious life. I'm not a religious woman myself, but I know that religious life is based on a hierarchy. Whereas the network is a horizontal one, so there is no hierarchy in it. And we needed to start a dialogue with them. We needed to have a dialogue, to converse with them. So what does it mean to my niece, for example, being so many hours on TikTok? How does she feel? Why does she value this social media, for example? Bernadette.
Responses that we're getting from you, I'm very happy to see. It shows that we are engaged. It shows that we know that many of us who are engaged in issues that really affect our world right now are encountering a culture that is not really ours anymore. It makes us feel uncomfortable at times, and it may evoke fear, it may evoke control. Why control? I think control because we don't understand it, and therefore we kind of tend to impose our own, the way that we've grown up to interpret things onto them. And this is what I have in my experience as a journalist, as my experience as a communicator in the church. If we can name whatever negative things come up, or if we can name the words that we would use to describe what we saw in the TikTok video, that can actually be a roadmap for us. In other words, it becomes the place where we can begin to connect, where we can begin to ask ourselves questions. And for a long time, the church has had a more defensive approach to the press. So we're going to move into that a little bit, and I'll be continually alluding to the example that Patricia gave us about the TikTok, the young woman. I don't even remember her name. So that already gives us a clue for those of us working in justice and peace, doesn't it? Okay. I'd like to go back to, Sister Sheila, your presentation at the, I'm sorry. Oh, no, go ahead. Sorry. Perfect, okay.
Vemos que siguen llegando comentarios.
We are receiving very interesting comments and feedback. And I think that this will also help us shaping the rest of the meeting so that we can better organize them based on the needs that everybody has. I do not want to add anything else because throughout the next meetings, we will also be considering good practices, not to use, because I do not like the word use when referring to the digital world, because we experience, we live in the digital world. So the digital world leads to anthropological contexts where our idea of men, women, animals, and objects will change. And men will not be in the center of these digital worlds. So we need to change our attitude, our behavior. Plus, we will be considering good practices that we can use also from the Vatican. The Vatican is really using some very appropriate kind of communication in its campaigns about Pope Francis. Now we will move forward based on our agenda. And the next item on the agenda is this. We'll be talking about a more practical experience. How can we build a relation with the press? So I've been listening to many comments about religious women and nuns saying, no, I do not talk to the press. Well, I respect everybody and every position, but we are living in a world of communication, a very powerful, where communication plays a powerful role, and we need to face this. And if we do not talk about our own reality, then other people will do it in our place, saying things that probably do not even represent our own situation. So we need to understand how we can build a relationship with the press, with reporters, with journalists. They're no enemies, because poor things, they also do work for other companies, and they have to do things even if they do not accept what it's been imposed upon them. And I've got plenty of examples that we could share. So Bernadette, could you please help us understand a bit better? And especially because I know that we have people from countries where we do not have democracy or freedoms in order to freely talk about human rights. So I think that this is a very strong challenge we're facing, right? I give you the floor.
We're living in a world where we talk about a global village, and yet where, especially in the area of freedom, of human rights, there are many, many different realities out there. So I hope that I'll be able to touch on many of them, but we're going to be relying on your questions. So please feel free, send us questions, send us comments so that we can hopefully touch on some of the areas that we might miss. Now I'd like to get back to Sister Sheila's presentation at the UISG plenary last May, in which she spoke about one of the JPIC campaigns, and that is the one on the environment, Sowing Hope for the Planet. And why do I bring that up? Number one, it's a well-organized campaign that the UISG, or that the JPIC has kicked off. And it's a good reminder to us that many of you are connected with JPIC, and many of you are also connected with other organizations. We're speaking specifically today about migration and migrants, but the same can be said about other areas that we work with. We are members of a network, and that is to our benefit. These pieces of information, the fact that we're a network, it's very important, because we as women religious, as men religious, or as lay people who work with men and women religious, are moving constantly in and out of different audiences, other organizations that influence other areas that we are not getting to. And so my first point of awareness I think I'd like to do is that wherever we are communicating. Wherever we are, with whomever we are speaking with. Even, for example, this may be very mundane, but even when we're behind the wheel of a car and we react to someone who's cut us off, we're communicating. So that's the first thing. And because of the networks that we're moving in and out of, we never know when something we've said, something we've done is actually going to come full circle. So, however, getting back to our relationships within religious congregations, either male or female, and the work that we're doing, we do need to also be aware that it does give us a certain vantage point or a certain authority on a larger platform, from which we are then able to launch publicity, information, messages, in which we're able to become influencers. So, my opinion relating to the press begins with the organizations with whom we relate. In other words, I would not only think of, for example, myself working in the Vatican as the only organization in my network. I would think of the UISG, I would think of JPIC, I would think of Talitha Kum, I would think of other organizations, embassies here in Rome with whom I am connected. So we're already thinking in network and communal language, and it can't be taken for granted because it really is part of the mix, and our message can become stronger if we think that way. Secondly, I think that interacting with the press requires brainstorming with people at all of those levels. Now, the question is asked, well, if we want to be able to relate with the press, that means getting our message to the public, and we want to include young people. How do we get our message across to a larger number of people? The answer is to have young people among your group that you can call on at different times to help you brainstorm. Can you bring them in and introduce them to what you do? Many of you, I have a funny feeling your work is something that young people are passionate about. We can bring them in and allow them to accompany us. And in this way, they introduce us to their world, and we introduce them to ours. They can help be a part of that brainstorming, and they will give us a new language, they will give us a new vision, and we will be able to give them some direction. The paradigm that was used at the Youth Synod I really like comes, I believe it came from a missionary in Samoa, where young and old people need to be together in a canoe. The older generation allows the younger ones to see the stars, but it's the younger generation that has the rose in their hand. The oars in their hand. Many of us are still holding on to the oars. And it's time that we become the visionaries and the leaders that our young people are lacking, and take them on an adventure. But we need them. We need their energy. We need their ideas. We need their rowing power. So I am very much in favor of a proactive approach to the press. It means those of us who are at work in the field, we need to have direct contact with our own press people within organizations if we have them, and give direction especially to them. But it also means that we are in direct contact with the press, even if it means through a press officer or a communications office. Now, what do I mean by proactive relationships? I mean, alluding to what Patrizia said, that we see journalists as our colleagues, that we see them as friends, that we see them as partners to help us tell our story, to help us get our message out, so that we'll be able to reach that public and become the influencers we want to be. It means that we never give vibes, going back to that network image. I'm sorry I didn't bring any images with me, but let's go back to the one that Patrizia showed us of the network. Our points of contact, we emit certain energy. And if the press gets the feeling that we think they are the enemy, they will treat us as such, and they will try to dig as deep as they can to get the dirty. However, if our relationships are positive, if we invite them in, if we have the information ready for them, if we're willing to talk and be honest, but know exactly what we want to say, they will hear that, they will pick up that vibe, and the reporting will be very, very different. So establishing relationships, invite journalists, either individually or as a group, for things such as press conferences, meeting points. If you have new leadership, this is a great time to do that. Campaigns, things, any type of event that you think they might be interested in, or just to go out and have dinner, share over lunch, things that you're doing. Allow them to meet with people who can give them the information, people who are prepared to respond to questions. And this means then that we have people within the organization who are capable of responding, who have the information, and that a few people, or especially one person, might have all the information to be able to respond to all the variety of questions that may come up. Because dealing with journalists, we might come up with questions we hadn't planned on answering. And so it's a very good, it's a good practice to have someone who may be able to answer as broad a category of questions as possible. And also that we have within the organization people who have been named to speak on behalf of the organization, and also who know how to effectively communicate. That's sometimes difficult to get in one person, but it is possible. Now, being proactive also means, someone brought this up in the comments in the chat room, it means that we feed journalists. Okay, it means that we feed them. And this comes up in the brainstorming that we have. What are the types of things that we know journalists are interested? The only way that you're going to know that is reading what they write. Who writes about what? And by knowing who writes about what, we will then be able to know how to feed who. What will catch the attention of X journalist? Activities or events? Who knows? But maintaining a relationship of feeding the press may not yield anything on a case-by-case basis. And this is something to keep in mind. In other words, just because you do it once and nobody bites doesn't mean that your efforts are in vain. As, again, someone who brought it up in the chat, it's the constant putting yourself in the face of someone that over time might cause that person to remember you and go to you when he or she needs information about something, because he's begun to realize that you are an influencer in a particular area. Having an effective relationship with the press also means that we adapt our language. And again, having young people as part of our team will help us do that. Because especially those of us who've grown up in corporate circles, especially in the church, our language is sometimes unintelligible. And we need to be able to translate the churchese or the jargon into much more understandable language. And young people can help us do that. First of all, they can tell us when we don't make sense, which is helpful. I remember when I was learning Spanish, and I learned Spanish in literature class, and it didn't dawn on me that my vocabulary is like a book until one of the other kids in class said, I speak like a book. We have to have that feedback in order to know, oh, okay. Constructive feedback. And also, this is very important because most of the time when we are interacting with the press, it's in a non-ecclesiastical context. And so this is very important. Now, another element that sometimes may seem to fall on the wayside because it's not immediately evident to us is that members of the organization might have contacts among members of the press. So we may have other members who are not in the communication field who have contacts, or people who we may invite to an event may know people in the press. And so giving them the information about who can be contacted with the organization if they know someone is also a very, very helpful tip. Now, keeping social media sites up to date is extremely important. I don't know how many times I, as a journalist, rely on websites, organizational websites, to get up-to-date information. If your websites are not up to date, a journalist may publicize information that's out of date, incorrect. So that's a huge to keep in mind. And the other thing is our plans, our brainstorming can go only so much, can go only get to so much. Relying on the spontaneous tweets, Instagram, which are immediate, spontaneous methods of communication, may actually be the thing that sparks a media frenzy. Because it's the unplanned, spontaneous spark that many times catches journalists' attention, especially on Twitter, rather than our carefully planned communication strategy. It's very true. So before taking questions, do we want to get into the code of ethics or leave that?
Yes, please.
Okay. Two things first. One of the last things that often is missed in relations with the press is evaluation. I'm a firm believer in evaluating. If you have had a campaign, if you have proactively tried to engage journalists, it's good to evaluate afterward, to learn so as to grow. Now, this can be done also on, like a quarterly basis or semi-annual or annual basis as well, because the more that we brainstorm, the more that we keep up, because communication is evolving so rapidly, the fresher our interaction with the press will be. And I think this is very, very important. So some of the questions that we can ask is what's worked? What has not generated hoped for results? What new things can we try? And in this way, our relationships can remain healthy and fluid. They can continually grow. We can stop putting energy into what isn't working over time and try new things. So that's the part about our relationship with the press. The next thing I'd like to bring up, and we can probably send it to you after this because it's in the public sphere. At the beginning of February, I was fortunate to go to Abu Dhabi for the celebrations of the first anniversary of the signing of the document on human fraternity. I was there for two events. One was the Arab Media Convention on Human Fraternity, and the second was the actual anniversary celebration that was organized by the higher committee that is implementing the document. It was fascinating as a journalist to be a part of a convention involving Arab journalists. Most of it I didn't understand. However, a common profession opens dialogue. At the end of the convention, the promoters took up a suggestion that had come up in the workshops and presented a code of ethics, 20 principles that they were offering to media professionals in order to promote human fraternity throughout the world. It's fantastic. And it touches such things as migrants, especially because in the document on human fraternity, there are two things that are requested. Number one, that we eliminate the word minority because of the violence that just the word and targeting people as minorities induces, the prejudices that it automatically produces. The second is a new understanding of citizenship. In other words, with the huge numbers of migrants in the world today, that our citizenship is actually based not on what country we're born in or what passport we hold, but the fact that we're brothers and sisters. And so wherever we find ourselves, hopefully one day will be the definition of citizenship. So how can we get there? This code of ethics, which I'm hoping will become a matter of discourse at other levels on the international sphere, talks about, first of all, the basic right to freedom of speech. That's one of them. But it gets into things like what photographs we use to talk about situations. You know, there was a woman who was, and I don't remember where she lived, but she was in a horrific either accident or act of terrorism or something. Her photographs went around the world as she was in the most vulnerable moment in her life, and she had no say over the use of her photograph. And she's now campaigning about this. So we as Justice and Peace promoters, there are communication issues that we too need to be involved with in order to that justice is extended also in the world of communication. So this is another aspect of our ministry. So one of them would be when we talk about war and its impact on innocent civilians, that we avoid adopting or promoting intellectual positions to fuel wars. How do we report wars? How do we report violence? Committing to support displaced persons and victims of war, that we tell their story as well. That we mobilize local and international public opinion that we consider the human side in media coverage related to terrorist crimes, conflicts, or related incidents. They also talk about the emphasizing of the sanctity of human life, regardless of religion, gender, race, or color. To confront and counter abusive stereotypes. To encourage humane media content. And this is where all of you come in, because I believe the most effective way that justice and peace, people working in that sphere, can contribute to the messages by telling the story, allowing people to tell their stories. We've seen the YouTube that's gone around the world right now of the father in Syria who's trying to get his child to laugh as bombs are circling around. He brought humanity into a horrific situation that all of us can understand. And he told his story. And it's impacting us. It's making us realize what's happening. Every father who has a child will be able to relate in a different way. So how do we tell our story? And it's not about facts and figures. I believe we need to begin telling our story. Another thing that they are embracing is advocating for women's causes. Another is placing an emphasis on respecting moral and media codes, especially those relating to children. There's others relating to victims of human trafficking. Another regarding combating fanaticism, especially in sports fans. But then there's also one that's to encourage art associations and artists. How can we do that? Talitha Kum is doing that right now with their Super Nun campaign. How can we engage the artistic community? And one of the last ones is to support charitable work and humanitarian initiatives. So we're the ones that have got to get those out there. We're the ones that are involved in these things. So I think through Patrizia, we can direct you to these code of ethics. They're extremely helpful. We can get the word out there, and then we can try in our own sphere to also see what we can do in the justice and peace field regarding media.
Thank you very much, Bernadette. Oh, and I'm so happy that people keep writing. I'm really exciting. We are living in the digital world while I love it. And thank you very much, because I know that some of the promoters, as Sheila and Pix know better than me, are in countries where you cannot say everything. So you have to be very careful. Sometimes you cannot have a social media profile, but that doesn't mean that we cannot communicate. There are other ways to communicate. We can become living social media. So we have to be this openness to connect. We have to enter in the dimension of the network that allows us to be bridge, to be relationship, to be, not just the point, the dot, the element, but the relationships. And the cultural aspect, Bernadette. We at the USG will work a lot on interculturality, and we will have something on intercultural communication. It will be a webinar outside this course. But it's true, because you cannot communicate the same if you are in Italy or you are in Pakistan. There are images that are, I see many comments here about use of images. You cannot use the same image to say something in one country and in another. It depends on the society. So you have to be very strategic, but very clever. And sometimes, my dears, we have to invest money to do that. I'm sorry, you know, otherwise we are naive. We need professional people to do to make a good video, even though for 2 minutes. Otherwise, we work a lot, but we do not see the results. And for us, the results are not numbers, are to change the world, changing the heart of the people. While we give 2 minutes of our translator to rest, I invite you, the participants, to think if you had in your congregation, in your whatever, in your institute, in your organization, a good or a bad experience with the press. I'm sure you had. So just remind that. And if you want to share it, you're most welcome. Otherwise, you can just remind you and see what was wrong and what was good, what worked and what didn't. So in 2 minutes, you can just reflect a bit, and then we go back here with some questions and with Bernadette, and I would like also to recuperate some of the questions and the comments that you shared. Thank you. I mean, the relationship about adults and how involved we are. We can say something more. Okay. I would like to ask if you can say something about how to prepare a press release.
Sure.
2, 3
Yeah.
elements. Okay.
Sure. Yeah.
And then if you want to echo something, we can dialogue a bit.
How's the...
Okay, I'm trying to also to take some questions from the chat. So I have 3 questions, Bernadette, at the moment, and then we go back to other comments about youth. I'm realizing that you are very focused. There is a need, at least in the English room, about the relationship with youth and adults and us, let's say. We will go back again, don't worry. The questions are this one. The first, can you tell us 2, 3 tips, suggestions to write a good press release? Because sometimes we do not have nobody to do that.
Okay.
I will tell the 3, okay? The second, what are the journalists interested in? Because sometimes, for instance, I know that there are people here working in anti-trafficking networks, and we experience the same. They are thirsty of blood. They want the survivors. They want the victims. And sometimes we cannot do that. We don't want to do that. This is the second question. The third and the last one. Sometimes we receive a lot of requests because I don't know why, perhaps you can help us to understand that, but the USG, but I would say women religious life is particularly, receives a particular attention from the world. And I'm happy, but sometimes they ask us for interviews and then they write an article that it seems to be another article, as they were interview someone else. And it's very hard. Or I want to give you 2 examples that I experienced. One time they wrote a very nice article using an awful photo. When I see awful photo, I mean that doesn't represent the article, doesn't represent the reality. And second, reporting sources, quotations that are not. Help us, Bernadette. We need 2 hours.
Exactly. Okay. And I've already forgotten the first one.
Press release.
Press
I can help you,
release.
don't worry. I know
Perfect.
that we are old. Press release.
Okay. Press releases. Writing a press release is at first, it seems to be one of the most easiest things you can do. And then when you have to do them, they are actually one of the hardest things you need to do. Why? Because you're limited to what you can say, and you need to be as effective as a communicator as possible to get a lot into a small amount of space. It all has to do with, in my opinion, it has to do with organizing your thought, being logical, so that, and being coherent from the very beginning, because if people get the feeling that the communication is not effective, they're not even going to continue reading. So from the very beginning, the press release needs to be well written. What do we put at the beginning? Our lead in a press release needs to be actually it's the 5 W's of journalism. What, when, why, when, and where. And basically, you have to sell your event, your publicity in 1 sentence. So your opening sentence is the most important sentence and the one you need to sweat over. Everything else in your press release is then up to you. You need to discern how it's going to flow, the information that a journalist will want to know, because if they don't come, they are going to use your press release. If they decide to report on it, they will use your press release to craft their article. One good thing is to have someone who's speaking there, to have something of what they're speaking or something about the event, because press releases are often embargoed, so that they'll have something about the event that they can actually write on. But it's also a way to get them to come. Like if they know so-and-so is going to speak, or if he's going to say this, or if this is what you're going to be announcing or promoting or whatever, that might be the thing to get them to the event in the end. Press releases should be no longer than 1 page, well spaced. If it's too dense, nobody's going to read it. And I know it's a tough thing to write. And there are tons of examples that you can get on the internet. So always, fall back on, or even press releases that you've received that were well done, keep them and study them and see. I suggest not writing them in only one person, but really to have a team working on them, 2 or 3 people. Okay. What sells in the media is often what we are not about. Blood, guts, and lots of money. Now, this is exactly what this code of ethics of the journalists is addressing. In other words, has our profession become that? And I think we're living in a wonderful age, because as Patrizia said before, we are all producers of media. We don't need to wait for the press, who seem to only be interested in blood, guts, and gore, to take our stories. We can tell our own stories. And we can get them out there. And this is where we can involve young people. Many of you have children, many of you have grandchildren, and they have friends. That's where we can begin to start looking for young people. Or if you join a younger generation's organization in the same field, that's another way of being in touch with that generation. Articles with mistakes. Okay, there are a lot of times when we've given an interview and then it's like, oh my gosh, I don't remember saying that at all. In fact, I said exactly the opposite. Okay. This is an aspect of journalism I really don't like. It often shows that there are biases, even among journalists who should be objective and who should be reporting objectively. In other words, not changing what a person says. Photographs are even worse because, as we know, photographs speak a lot louder than words. Now, these are things we may think are beyond our control. However, one of the things that I highly promote is when we either solicit interviews or when we are contacted for interviews, that we do due diligence. In other words, that we get to know the journalist who's asking us for the interview. If we're soliciting an interview, that we solicit among journalists that we can trust, who want to help us tell our story. Some journalists will provide us with questions ahead of time, some will not, as an ethical issue. Some will allow us to look at what they plan to publish before they publish, and some will not. So these are things that need to be negotiated before the interview. And I highly suggest whatever parameters you have set for yourself and the organization, never get crossed. We need to be prudent. I hope those are some answers that are helpful.
Yes, I want to share a practice that we experienced just some days ago. An article went out in an Italian newspaper quoting a congregation, a sister of a congregation who actually doesn't exist, because this congregation has nobody from this country. So what we were shocked about that, and the article was not really well done, was like picking up from different articles, different news, and she made one like a puzzle. So the congregation decided to contact a lawyer, and the lawyer wrote a letter to the magazine, and the magazine was obliged to publish a review of the article. So we have tools to change the reality. And as Bernadette suggested to us, we learn from mistakes at the USG. So now we usually ask questions. If both, either if it's a written interviews, or if it's a live interview. And we also now we have this habit to record the interview and to have another person close to the person who has been interviewed. So you have, I mean, it's just small details to help. And it's important when you receive a request from a journalist, it's important that you take information about this person and his heading, her heading. You know, you have to know which is the kind of articles they used to write, okay? So I know this is like a job. Yes, but it's very delicate now. If we say some word, we can damage our congregation, our reality, other people outside our institute. So we have to be very careful.
Confidentiality. Yeah, please. Another thing that to be very aware of is confidentiality, and many of us may represent people whose identities need to remain anonymous for various reasons. And knowing how to tell stories, get the word out there when both the people involved, but also those who may be helping them, their identities may need to be reserved. These are very delicate issues, and there are ways of telling stories in such a way that identities can remain reserved. Also, when we are involved with victims and having victims tell their stories, because oftentimes when a victim tells his or her story, they are re-victimized, they're re-traumatized. Now that can also lead to traumatization among the audience. These are all things we need to be aware of as we communicate our message, but there are ways of, for example, I was at the preview today of a documentary that Talitha Kum has done, Wells of Hope. The way that they told the story of a person who was trafficked was through a storyteller, through another actress who took on the role of the victim. And this is one way. For those of you who are in countries where freedom of the press is compromised, getting back to what Patrizia said, you have a network. We need to be smarter than than the things that seem to bind us. You know, Jesus once said that the people of darkness are often smarter than the people of light. Well, let's get smarter than they are. There's a network. There are people on the outside who can tell your story. Who do you know? What is your message? What do you need? If you begin to ask some of those questions, you may be able to then begin to find the path. So, you know, I was speaking with one congregation at a general chapter, and I was telling them of the importance of using social media, especially in the area of countering human trafficking. And they immediately brought up all kinds of reasons why they couldn't: fears, fear of viruses, fear of all kinds of, you know, fears that legal stuff and things like that. And again, it's these fears and these things that seem to block us. We need to name them. What are they? What's inhibiting us? Name them, but let them be your roadmap. In other words, who do I need to know? Who do I need to contact? What education do I need? Who do I need to be networked with? What licenses do I need? What computer technology or support do I need so I don't get viruses? Do you see what I'm saying? So these things can become our roadmap instead of our roadblock. So I think that's very important. You know, missionaries from Europe who were trying to get to Africa in the 1800s could have died through shipwreck. And they didn't let that stop them. Well, we're those people of today. And sometimes it seems that we may be on a shipwreck, or that a shipwreck may be imminent, but let's not allow that to stop us.
Thank you very much, Bernadette. Thank you to all of you, sisters and brothers. We are going to close the first meeting, but we still have something, and Bernadette helped us to introduce the tips session, that is the final activity. I asked Sister Gabriella Bottani. She's the coordinator of the Talita Cum network at the international level. I know that because I read all your expectations and I saw that some of them are working in anti-trafficking, and that is a sensitive issue. I asked her to give us some tips on this field. So now we are going to listen her short video in English.
Communication is a very important tool. We are in the age of the communication. Everything is communication. We need to communicate if we want to exist. So we cannot do any work without communicate the work we are doing. Now I would like to take a time to share my experience as international coordinator of Talita Cum, a global network working in a very sensitive topic like human trafficking. I have to tell you that at the very beginning, I was a bit scared about communication, to enter in this world that I didn't know. Then I realized the more I knew the tools that the communication is offering to us, the more we can overcome also the negative side of communication. Let me bring some example. Communication and the social media are used to recruit people. They are exposing ourselves in a world where not only religious sisters, but also traffickers and people that are not very well-intentioned are in, or journalists looking for a scoop, selling our information or using our images for not real the purpose we have in communicating. But anyway, First of all, I would like to share some experience. Talita Kum now has a website, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. We are working a lot in communication, speaking with journalists, and since 2019, we are presenting campaigns like Nuns Healing Hearts, Super Nuns. Then we have also, we are working on we present a documentary film on Wells of Hope, our first network in the Middle East, joining women of different faith traditions. And the more we are using the communication, the more we are also visible, and the more we can spread out our methodology and our vision how to present the reality of human trafficking. And I would like to come now and give you some experiences we have done. When I arrived here in Rome, I realized that many people were asking for picture portrait of survivors. They wanted the stories, but they were not really interested in the story of trafficked people, but they were more interested in a scoop, a mediatical scoop. And I will never forget a girl. She was interviewed, she told her story, and then when the movie was done, she was sharing with me and she started to cry because she didn't realize before that the consequences of making her story known all over the world. And the reason, it was very simple. The family, after being trafficked, this person was able to come back home. She has 2 sons, a husband, and her family didn't know in the details her stories. So I started to realize that whenever we are inviting people in giving their witness or telling their story, that it's not enough to protect, for example, covering the eyes or putting them from the backside, because the voice is recognized. So the respect of the people we are serving is one of the main important issues. We are communicating, we are invited to use communication, but never communications is at the first level. The first purpose of our communication is the dignity and the protection of every person.
Español.
This video was shot yesterday afternoon with Gabriella with a mobile phone. So, well, it's no high quality video, as you can see, but this is just to tell you that sometimes you can do simple things to share your experiences by using simple tools. Now we're going to finalize our first meeting. I really hope that this first meeting gave you not only an overview, but it also motivated you to work with passion, because communicating is also a matter of passion. Sometimes we are overwhelmed with something and we need to tell other people. And also women and men, when they met Jesus, they just wanted to tell it and to narrate it. And that's exactly what we're doing through communication. So telling about beauty. Next time, during the second meeting, we will be talking about social media and social networks. And Father Amado will be here. He's a very digital man. So the commission dramatically changed since he joined it. And after that, then we will see also the experience of Alba Sabate, who's working in a Blanquerna observatory about religious and culture. and it's an observatory in Barcelona, Spain, and she will be giving us a few examples of good practices for social media and social networks. But before finalizing, I would like to invite you for this week to go and look for an example that, in your opinion and based on your sensitiveness, can be considered as a good practice in terms of social networks. Just one example is enough, because of course we have many participants. So I would like to invite you to do so and to send these examples to me, well, in this case to my own email address, the one you're already using, because we will be selecting a few of them to share them during the next meeting. So I would like to invite you, to urge you to reflect upon these topics so that we can also share them during the next course. I think we can finalize, right, Sheila? Can we close? Perfect. So.
Happy. There are a lot of things, I read your comments, there are a lot of things that we couldn't answer, but we will try to take care of that. In a way or another, we will find a way, okay? So don't forget to be living social media, to be living stories, starting from now when we close this meeting. Happy week and see you next week, 27th of February. Bye-bye.